The Tarot gets its name from ancient Egypt. Egypt had two names, by which it will actually have at least two names. Kami is one of the names that was actually known by the Egyptians, not by the Greeks. Most of the names you have out of Egypt are actually Greek names. For instance, Cheops is Greek. The king's name in Egyptian is Khufu. Isis is Greek. The Egyptian name is Asti. Ramses, Greek. Ramasu, Egyptian. So and Ampu for Anubis. All these names that we have, we get because of Alexander the Great, who went in and left his general, Ptolemy, and Ptolemy actually became the founder of the Ptolemaic succession because he married into the royal line, and all of the subsequent Ptolemies actually were descended from a Greek, as well as a female Egyptian. Also, there is no such thing as a pharaoh as a person. When they said the pharaoh did this, it's like saying the White House did this. Pharaoh meant the king's great house. Their word was Sultan, which meant king. Anyway, the words for their country, one of them was Kami, from which we get alchemy, out of Egypt. And another one is Ka-Ra, the land of Ra, from which we get the Tarot. Okay? There was an army under one of the Ramses, I'm not sure which, I don't remember. My husband could tell you, but he's dead, so he can't. Anyway, he taught hieroglyphics, ancient Egyptian history, things like this. The army became afraid, and they turned tail, and they ran. And a small group saved the king. And the king said, if you won't fight for your country, you can't come back to it. And so they became wanderers. Well, an army had with it priests, and the priests would take with them in scroll form, and the scrolls were mainly like pictures of things rather than long written scrolls. They took with them the major teachings. They were both sacred and profane. And these teachings were the 42 books of Thoth. Okay? We know that they existed. The fact that they existed is a matter of historical record. The books themselves are not. They disappeared. And it was predicted sometime early in the last century that they would be discovered in the middle of the last century, and there is some evidence that they were. And an American Army officer was given custody of them. It's the last anybody saw of them. They probably ended up in some wealthy collector's collection. But we do know that the 42 books of Thoth did exist, and we know that they embodied the major teachings of the entire religion, the whole society. They didn't really separate religion from life. They saw things more as a whole. When this army was not allowed to come home, by the way, the king got together another army, went out and defeated the enemy, but that's not part of the story. But when they became wanderers, they went across the Mediterranean. They went into Italy, Spain, France. They also went into the Ural Mountains. They made their way up to Russia. They became known as the Gypsies. And they carried with them these teachings. Well, when they got into the northern Mediterranean countries of Spain, Italy, and France, they were encountering the Christian religion, which was then becoming they hadn't quite gotten to the Inquisition, but it was close. And it was not a healthy thing to be spouting another religion. At the same time, probably in Spain, but there's argument whether it was Spain, France, or Italy, playing cards were invented. And the deck that was then invented had 56 cards. It had 4 suits, and the suits in the original decks, there was one suit which were coins, There was a suit which was a blade of some sort. Whether it was a knife, a sword, it was always a blade. There was a suit which was a cup or a vessel of some sort. And there was a staff of some sort. And the 56 cards, now the playing cards we have 52 cards. The difference is we have a king, a queen, and a jack. And in their deck, instead of a king, queen, and jack, you had a king, a queen, a knight, and a page. And the knight and page were combined into the jack in the 52 card deck we have. All right, here was a 56 card deck, 4 suits, and here were the 42 books of thought. So somebody very brilliantly in Italy combined the two and invented a game called Tarocchi. And it used a tarot deck or a tarot deck, depending upon how you care to pronounce it. They took the 16 court cards, the 4 knights and the pages and the kings and the queens, the 4 aces, and those were 20 of them. And they took the other 22 books of thought. In fact, they were the most important of the 20. They were the 22, and they became what's called the major arcana. 22 books that do not have a suit. And these 22 books of thought are also represented in the Temple of Isis in 22 pillars, 2 rows of 11 pillars facing each other. And those pillars each stand for one of these lessons, and the 22 major arcana cards also do. You will find today tarot decks that only use the major arcana cards. You will also find tarot decks that use 78, which is the full deck plus the 22. Anyway, and I don't know of any that just use 42, strangely enough. Now, the very first of the mystery lessons, Greece, Rome, Egypt, wherever you want to go, the mystery lessons are the same, basically. And the first lesson talks about the 4 forces in the earth that act upon everything and are acted upon by everything. These forces are represented by the 4 suits. You will find books that tell you a particular force is represented by a particular suit. If that's the way you wish to use it, feel free. Most of the books don't assign the forces quite correctly according to the ancient teachings, but they're perfectly good. I mean, it doesn't matter how you do it. You're just using symbology. The ancients believed that the first force, which is fire, was assigned to coins or discs because they are very active. And in fact, the first tarot cards actually were about this large. They were very thin wood, and they were painted on. And you can buy replicas of some of them, although usually they're in pasteboard. Anyway, the fire represents activity and change. And it's easy to remember it because the word change is what you call a bunch of coins in your pocket. Now, this particular symbol was changed in time into a pentacle, but the original was coins, and all of the original decks show coins. Okay? And that is the force, and if you were to have a 3, it would represent a moderate amount of change, and if you had a 9, it would be a lot of change or a lot of activity. The second suit, and this in the Rider-Waite, which is the deck we teach out of, which comes closest to the ancient teachings, but it isn't, but it comes closer. By the way, the Thoth deck has very little to do with ancient Egypt. Even though Crowley claimed it did, it really was a real distortion of a lot of things. The Rider-Waite is the closest thing we have today to what they would have taught. Although there are a couple of Egyptian decks that are very good. But they aren't. They are decks that are based on gods and goddesses. And by the way, in the Egyptian culture, a god or a goddess simply represented a force of nature. They were not deities to be worshipped. They were forces to get in touch with. But that's another story. Anyway, this is the deck, the part of the deck that represents fire, activity, and change. Second one is air, represented by swords. Swords cut, they move through the air. They express something, whether it's physical or emotional or intellectual. The deck, the part of the deck using swords expresses communication, ideas. Okay? Third one in this deck is staff. The staff represents the force of earth. And the force of earth is about nurturing and stability. And that's what this card is about, nurturing and stability. That's what the actual deck is. May or may not be what the card is in a given situation. All right? And the fourth suit is represented by cups or vessels of some sort, and it represents awareness and receptivity. It's sort of the other half of the swords. If the swords are the expression outward, the cup is understanding inward or awareness inward. Frequently, emotions are very strongly represented in cups. Okay? Make sense? This is a smaller version of one of the older decks, but not the original, in which they used a round disc, but not even coins, as the fire. This was the air, it was the blade. They used a baton for their staff. Now the staff that's used here is better because it shows more than one aspect. Because the staff shows stability, and it also, because it has leaves growing out of it, shows the nurturing quality of earth. Okay? And then these were the cups in this suit. As you can see, this is a 4 of cups. There's no picture. There's just an enumeration of cups. This is 10 of wands or batons. This is a 7 of swords. And this is a 6 of discs. You can read with these as long as you understand that it is the amount of this force that's being depicted by the card. So there are people who still read with cards like these that don't have any more pictures. The reason we use the Rider-Waite is when you look at a picture, you have to see something. You just can't avoid it. Any questions about all of that? Okay.
What suit can represent spirituality?
The whole thing in the ancient tradition, you do not separate the spiritual from the mundane. You are a whole. You have a physical nature, an emotional, an intellectual, and a spiritual. And if you attempt to separate any one of them or to look at the others without seeing the others, you're seeing it incompletely. Therefore, no suit represents spirituality. The entire deck represents the spiritual approach, the awareness from that level and how you bring it into the mundane.
Is the same true then for physicality and emotions?
They're all there.
And early on, when you were defining the gypsies, they were the soldiers that left the pharaoh?
Well, soldiers, the women that were with them, the camp followers, it was the whole army, actually, including the priests.
That left?
That were told they couldn't come back.
Okay.
It wasn't a large army, but it was a big enough army, and they did spread out. Actually, when they got up into Russia, some of the gypsies were actually allowed to marry into the nobility in some parts of the Soviet, whether you realize it or not. Although they became pretty much outcasts in a lot of the world. But it isn't so much that they were outcasts, they held themselves apart. They really did, because they were not accepting some of the values around them, and so they became very clannish in that they were holding to their values. And because of that, they were, again, outcasts. Any group that does becomes that. Okay. I've got a bunch of tarot decks, and if nobody wants to buy any, it's okay. If you want to buy any, we bring them in because we've got them. And you can see some part of most of them in these. This is, to me, one of the best little books I've ever come across. We started getting these books when they were 75 cents a book. Then 95, then $1.25. They are now $3.95 plus tax. But it still is one of the best things ever written, both about the tarot and actually, because you asked about spirituality, I think this book is incredible. This is by Ouspensky, P.D. Ouspensky. It's translated. These are not the cards he used. They're using the Rider-Waite. The Rider-Waite comes very close to his own private deck. But in his private deck, you'll see some differences in the pictures, just a little ones. And although they are, and the actual pictures would be differently made, but of the same subjects. He meditated on his cards, and he got these wonderful, wonderful defining spiritual expressions of what the cards are, just the major arcana. And one of the things it shows, you look at the first card, the first pillar in the temple, and the pillars went this way. So the last was opposite the first, and the next to the last was opposite the second. And if you look at them and study them the way they are opposite one another, it's very, very interesting. He has them in the order. Now, you'll find decks that have them all kinds of different orders, okay? They don't all keep the order the same, although they do keep the first and last the same always. But if you will study them as opposites, each will enhance your understanding of the other. And this book is almost poetry, and I'm going to share a couple of them with you. Except I think I forgot to get out two of them that I want to share with you. So those Here, find me the Hierophant and the Lightning Struck Tower, will you? Please. The first, by the way, the last card in the deck is not the 22nd, it's the 0 card, the Fool. And that is paired with the number 1 card, the Magician. Okay? I saw the man. His figure reached from earth to heaven and was clad in a purple mantle. He stood deep in foliage and flowers, and his head, on which was the headband of an initiate, seemed to disappear mysteriously in infinity. Before him, on a cube-shaped altar, were 4 symbols of magic: the scepter, the cup, the sword, and the pentacle. His right hand pointed to heaven, his left to earth. Under his mantle he wore a white tunic girded with a serpent swallowing its tail. By the way, serpent is, in many, many cultures, a symbol of wisdom. His face was luminous and serene, and when his eyes met mine, I felt that he saw most intimate recesses of my soul. I saw myself reflected in him as in a mirror, and in his eyes I seemed to look upon myself. And I heard a voice say, "Look, this is the great magician. With his hands he unites heaven and earth, and the 4 elements that form the world are controlled by him. The 4 symbols before him are the 4 letters of the name of God, the signs of the 4 elements: fire, water, air, and earth." I trembled before the depth of the mysteries I touched. The words I heard seemed to be uttered by the great magician himself, and it was as though he spoke in me. I was in deep trepidation, and at moments I felt there was nothing before me except the blue sky. But within me a window opened through which I could see unearthly things and hear unearthly words. And that is paired with this card. And I saw another man, tired and lame. He dragged himself along the dusty road, across the deserted plain under the scorching rays of the sun. He glanced sidelong with foolish staring eyes, a half smile, half leer on his face. He knew not where he went, but was absorbed in his chimerical dreams, which ran constantly in the same circle. His fool's cap was put on wrong side front, his garments were torn in the back, a wild lynx with glowing eyes sprang upon him from behind a rock and buried her teeth in his flesh. He stumbled, nearly fell, but continued to drag himself along, all the time holding on his shoulder a bag containing useless things which he, in his stupidity, carried wherever he went. Before him a crevice crossed the road, and a deep precipice awaited the foolish wanderer. Then a huge crocodile, which would have been the symbol of death, with open mouth crawled out of the precipice. And I heard the voice say, "Look, this is the same man." I felt my head whirl. "What has he in the bag?" I inquired, not knowing why I asked. And after a long silence, the voice replied, "The 4 magic symbols, the scepter, the cup, the sword, and the pentacle. The fool always carries them, though he has long since forgotten what they mean. Nevertheless, they belong to him even though he does not know their use. The symbols have not lost their power. They retain it in themselves." You see how they give you so much more when you see the two? And the other two that I was going to share with you.
They weren't in this part.
They
weren't in that part.
Oh, they aren't? They got to be somewhere. Maybe I've got them there. Oh. Maybe I haven't. Don't know I haven't. Here it is. Sorry, I think you go. They're right under my nose. That's why I couldn't see them. Oh well. That's me. The Hierophant in some decks is called the Pope. He's the great teacher, whatever he is called, in whatever deck. And there are decks that don't use these at all, and they're still just as good. I mean, Tarot is simply, it's a tool you use to tune in, and that's the whole point of it. And this is the Hierophant. Okay? I have to find him. I saw the great master in the temple. He was sitting on a golden throne set upon a purple platform, and he wore the robe of a high priest with a golden tiara. He held a golden 8-pointed cross, and lying at his feet were 2 cross keys. 2 initiates bowed before him, and to them he spoke. "Seek the path, do not seek attainment. Seek for the path within yourself. Do not expect to hear the truth from others, nor to see it or read it in books. Look for the truth in yourself, not without yourself. Aspire only after the impossible and inaccessible. Expect only that which shall not be. Do not hope for me. Do not look for me. Do not believe that I am outside yourself. Within your soul, build a lofty tower by which you may ascend to heaven within your soul. Do not believe in external miracles. Expect miracles only within you. Beware of believing in the mystery of the earth and a mystery guarded by men. For treasuries which must be guarded are empty. Do not search for a mystery that can be hidden by men. Seek the mystery within yourself. Above all, avoid those towers built in order to preserve the mysteries and to make an ascent to heaven by stone stairways. And remember that as soon as men build such a tower, they begin to dispute about the summit. The path is in yourself, and truth is in yourself, and mystery is in yourself. And that card is paired with this. And if I read this to you, this card will have a lot different meaning. It will still have any meaning you originally see, but it will have other meanings too. I saw a lofty tower extending from earth to heaven. Its golden crowned summit reached beyond the clouds. All around it black night reigned and thunder rumbled. Suddenly the heavens opened, a thunderclap shook the whole earth, and lightning struck the summit of the tower and fell the golden crown. A tongue of fire shot from heaven, and the whole tower became filled with fire and smoke. Then I beheld the builders of the tower fall headlong to the ground, and a voice said, "The building of the tower was begun by the disciples of the great Master, in order to have a constant reminder of the Master's teaching that the true tower must be built in one's own soul, and that in the tower built by hands there can be no mysteries, that no one can ascend to heaven by treading stone steps. The tower should warn people not to believe in it. It should serve as a reminder of the inner temple and a protection against the outer. It should be as a lighthouse in a dangerous place where men have often been wrecked and where ships should not go." But by and by the disciples forgot the true covenant of the Master and what the tower symbolized, and they began to believe in the tower of stone that they had built, and to teach others to so believe. They began to say that in this tower there is power, mystery, and the Spirit of the Master, that the tower itself is holy, that it is built for the coming Master according to His covenant and His will. And so they waited in the tower for the Master. Others did not believe this, or they interpreted it differently. Then began disputes about the rights of the summit. Quarrels started. "Our Master, your Master," was said. "Our tower, your tower." And the disciples ceased to understand each other. Their tongues had become confused. Do you understand the meaning here? They had begun to think that it is the tower of the Master, and that He builds it through them, and that it must and indeed can be built right up to heaven. And you see how heaven responded. Okay? Michael, come down. While he's coming down, I will point out one thing to you. You're all going to be reading for each other. And during the break, or just before the break, we're going to ask you to get a partner you don't know. It's very difficult to learn reading or to know how well you're doing when you read somebody you think you already know about. And if you already think you know, you're going to read things you think you know rather than what they actually are showing you. One of the keys in anything you do psychically is that you wish to say to your own unconscious before you do this, "Let me help this person with my reading." You don't have to understand the cards. That's not important. They do. You have to help them to understand the message that's being given to them. Sometimes when you read cards, you get a message for yourself as well. 6 people can read the same cards and get 6 different readings, or 25 people can read the same cards and get the same reading. I knew a woman who had been to well over a dozen readers. And she came to a friend of mine, and I was there. And she wanted my friend to give her a reading, and my friend gave her a reading. It was the same reading every single person had given her. And that reading was, "Stay out of your son's life." It isn't what she wanted to hear, so she kept going to other readers, trying to get somebody to tell her, "Go ahead and meddle." We had a class down at the Roanoke Community Center years ago. And we had asked a number of different people to come in just to show how different psychic tools were used. And I was going to show how to read playing cards. And we had stuck symbols underneath some of the chairs. And so people who had symbols got to be the ones who had a reading. And the young man that had the one for the cards was sitting there, and he was shuffling. And suddenly, several cards fell out of the deck, and I said, "Stop." And this is very important. Anytime cards fall out of the deck, read those. Always. Those are going to be more important than anything you pull out. If they come flying out, falling out, whatever, read them. So I stopped him, and I read what they meant. And then I gave him back the cards to go ahead and shuffle, and he shuffled for another couple of minutes. And then he put them upside down and pulled cards. And the first cards he pulled in order were those cards. That one blew away everybody. There were about 20 people in that class. I've never had anything quite that dramatic happen since. Sometimes we will do things like that, but always The cards can serve as a tool for you to gain access to an insight for someone else. Being psychic is mostly picking up things that are being broadcast by the person that's sitting opposite you, by their voice, their manner. They don't even know what, we most of us don't even know what we know about ourselves or what's going on in our lives, but we broadcast it. We broadcast it through all kinds of body language, everything from the flush of our face, the dilation of eyes, small muscle movements. And the unconscious sees it and is aware of it. And I would say between 80 and 90% of all psychic readings are actually the unconscious picking up information that's being broadcast by the person that's been getting the reading. The rest is still coming from other places. We have this. But your unconscious is incredibly aware, much more so than your conscious mind. And so when you get a reading, tell your unconscious you wish it to be helpful to the person and let it do it. Then get out of the way and allow it to give you thoughts about what you're looking at. When you look at a card, you have to see something. You just can't avoid seeing something. Okay? And the other thing is, the ancient Egyptians never saw anything as negative in the sense of this is bad, it shouldn't happen. They saw things as painful, but it is understood that out of even painful things we can get growth that we may want. They did not read the cards with negative meanings. There are books that tell you cards reversed have these negative meanings. In this class, you will not read that way. I don't care what you do after you leave this class. And in this class, each of you will turn every card you, the reader, get right side up to yourself, which means the hangman's upside down. And the reason you will do this is because in doing this, you are giving a very powerful message to your unconscious and to the unconscious of the person you're reading, even if they don't know about it. And that is, everything in life can be seen as an opportunity and can be looked at in a positive way. So in this class, we ask that you turn every card right side up as the reader. When you ask people to shuffle the cards, you then ask them to cut them 3 times. If they make 3 piles, which is 2 cuts, that's fine. If they cut 3 times and make 4 piles, that's fine. You pick them up any way you feel like. The whole thing is, it allows most people that you're reading for to feel you can't know what's going on inside them because that's too damn scary. The truth is, you can tune in. Cards are a fun way of doing it. They're an easy way of doing it. They're almost, if you only do it through cards, then until you put the cards down, you don't impose, you don't tune in. And when you put them down, you go for whatever limited degree that you will to help someone. Okay? That's like every other tool. We start with the tarot, though, because you can see a picture when you look at it. You want to come down, Michael? I gave them these 4. I had these 4, not the rest. Look at these. There's the suits and those are the cards. Mostly Michael is going to work with you if you need somebody to work with you. After the break, I do a lot of the talking because I talk fast. Believe me, he knows as much as I do.
Okay. We covered the 4 elements, fire, air, earth, water, and being. Which is basically a perspective on observing the natural universe and how things connect with what's going on.
Oh, but we forgot to say one thing that's really important. We're telling you where the meanings came from. You don't have to use them that way.
Right.
We're only giving you what they were at their source, okay?
Okay. On the 7 of the major arcana, the chariot. If you would noticed, he had 2 horses of different colors. The colors aren't what particularly matter here. It's the fact that there are 2 different directions. there are also no range on that. The charioteer generally is, one way of looking at it is someone who thinks they're going in a particular direction. They think they're going perhaps in the same direction. Are they? Perhaps one horse wants to go one direction and the other horse another direction. No range. Therefore, where is the control? Where do you have directing where you're going? It's like willy-nilly, go wherever you want to go. In one sense, it's a card that calls attention. Look at what's really going on. Are you really going where you think you're going? Pay close attention. And do something to rectify that if that's the case, in which you want to make sure you're going where you want to go. Where do you put a makeup? Yeah. Napkin, something. Okay. I had never seen in any reading death represented by a death card, which is the number 13 of the major arcana. In a reading which death has been forecast, it's been by another card. This is not Hollywood. This is tuning into awareness within yourself, the holy connection within yourself. If you observe on that, you have a rose pennant, a symbol of life. You also have a knight, which also is death inside a knight's armor, riding a white horse, and a holy person greeting this person. You have a lot of things going on here. You also have, depending upon the deck you look at, whether it's the rising sun or the setting sun. This is the rising sun.
Because of its color.
There are decks that use orange, so that makes that a setting sun. It really doesn't make that much of a difference, but it is significant in one way. In this particular card, the holy person embraces awareness, potentiality. If you look at the American Indian tradition, death is a constant companion that will always walk by your side. At any moment may claim you. What that really signifies is always live to the moment, live to the fullest. Change is a constant. That's the only constant I know of is change. It's the beginning, end of one cycle and the beginning of a new cycle.
Always.
It could be losing a job and then establishing a home-based business. It could be moving out of family and going someplace on your own. Whatever. It change, whether it's an internal change, whether it's a change around you, whether it's a combination of changes.
But it's always change that embodies the end of something,
Right.
or something new starting.
It's a cycle. The
Right.
end of one cycle, the beginning of a new cycle.
By the way, it's paired with the Empress, which is of all the growth. And the whole idea of the Empress is no matter how much growth, it also always ends, because it's paired with death.
So in this respect, it's a transition. So I personally prefer the rising sun. It's a new beginning, a new day. The cards that use the setting sun look at it as an ending of something. And then you have to wait for the beginning. To me, beginning and ending are simultaneous. There's no waiting. You may not know that you're going to make your home-based business, but you know something different going to happen. And you're an instrument of that happening. Okay? Okay. Number 6 of the major arcana for lovers. You have two individuals who are sharing a moment together, two whole individuals. A very free card, a very free moment, very free experience. Free in the sense of there's nothing holding them down. They are free to be what they are. It's like the whole world is open to them. Okay? This card is paired with the devil, which is the number 15 of the major arcana. Same two levels, as you'll notice, chained to a block. One thing this card can show is it can be a warning against possessiveness. Whether it's one attempting to own another, whether it's an employee trying to control your life so you don't have any time for what you need to be, whether it's you need to change circumstances, whatever it is. It's a card that shows that there's something restricting your freedom to be. And therefore that's something to be aware of and to do something about that. Any questions? Any comments? Yes?
Who was paired with the chariot?
Sure.
With the card?
The Emperor, I believe. I can't remember.
Yeah, that's what she puts up.
Let's see here. We'll find out. We're looking.
No, the Emperor was something else.
Okay, where
Just give it to me and I'll find it while you...
Okay. Pop quiz. Three of Swords. Anyone care to guess or venture what that card represents?
Change.
What kind of change?
Change in the heart. Or maybe something coming into the heart, like some knowledge or something
Okay.
coming into the heart that your soul.
Very interesting. Anyone else?
Speaking from the
That's
heart.
the moon, sorry.
Communication.
Speaking from the heart.
Yeah.
Important knowledge.
What?
And then the
Important-
Emperor, the sun, or
important
knowledge.
Chariot
Okay.
and the moon.
As you all
It's not
are coming from, the sword
It's
is
not temperance.
communication.
No. This was the moon.
It's also knowledge. It's bringing something to you. It's imparting something. Also, it's a 3.
We're not going with the order in other books, that's what I'm telling you.
One way of looking at this is
Oh, here, you want to see
a
these?
3 of Swords can be like the Holy Trinity. Understanding of the heart. When you look at hieroglyphics, whether it's Egyptian hieroglyphic or Chinese ideograms, the way their characters put together, they take concepts and they put them together to represent that concept. When they talk about a heart, they don't use the Cupid thing style heart and that means something. Now we know what a heart means. They would have used an actual heart that looks like a heart.
Pretty valid. Did we ever show you that?
No, I think we'll illustrate that real quick.
By the way, did you hear what he was saying while I was about... By the way, the Emperor and the Sun are together. To me, those two together represent the total aspects of God. It's a rather interesting way of looking at it. But of the universe, of universal law in Buddhism. We're not going into that. Not time in the book.
Okay, what this is this is the heart. The heart is the goes with pigs, some animal like that. This is the backbone, like the chest backbone. That's the Egyptian hieroglyphics, and what that...
Hold it. Explain what the backbone means first.
I'm kidding.
Okay. Not the whole. Go
Hmm?
ahead.
We're going to make more sense to show what it means into a break it down. In many teachings, or not many teachings, but in many translations, when you look at Egyptian translation, they frequently translate that as joy. And this is frequently in an epithet to a king or a pharaoh. How many kings, how many great leaders do you know ask for joy in their rule? That doesn't make sense. But if you look at King Solomon, he asked for an understanding heart. expansion of the heart. Because the backbone is expansion. Expansion contract.
And that's why they think it's joy.
So with the expansion of the heart, you have wisdom. The understanding heart.
The
Which is
ancient,
what you were coming from with this heart.
the ancient Egyptians, in their mystery lessons, said, the brain can tell you what you can do, but only your heart can tell you what you should do. Therefore, expansion of the heart is the expansion of wisdom, according to their teachings. Because it is the heart that tells you what you should do, and that is what wisdom is.
And therefore, it's like spiritual understandings, mundane understanding, heart, whatever, but the particular occasion that it comes up in and how you are looking at it. And it's going to be a moment-by-moment situation. It's not a set meaning, it's a way of helping you look at, ways of looking at what you're seeing, ways of looking at what you see going on. And there's no right or wrong. It's a matter of what you see and how you can work with it.
Well, I should show you simply that everything can have a meaning other than something disastrous. Right?
You know?
That everything can have a meaning other than something disastrous.
I mean, some people will see this as that's a lot of pain. A lot of pain in the heart. Maybe so. If they block it, if they fight it. But if they allow it, it's no longer painful. In one sense, it's very true. Something is as painful as you make it. Something is pain-free as you allow it to be. Most of that is up here. The body is simply an instrument. The number 10 of swords. Anyone like to continue their vein of thought with this?
Would somebody give a meaning for that?
Okay. More specific.
A lot of information.
A lot of information. Okay.
And what the person doing with it?
Is going to get it whether he wants it or not.
Right.
It's like there's too much of it.
But he's trying to avoid it.
If you're trying to avoid it, it can be overwhelming. But if you turned around and faced it, it wouldn't be overwhelming. It's like the ostrich. An ostrich, if it does not, let me not read a better example.
If it faces its enemy, it is nothing beats it, not even a lion.
The ostrich is a symbol of Ma'at, which is the highest moral principle in ancient Egyptian society, which represents order, harmony, justice, everything good for mankind. And among that is working with everything around it, not using but working with the environment. And an ostrich is represented by a feather, the ostrich feather, that represents Ma'at, a symbol. There are many symbols represented that they call them. If the ostrich buries its head in the sand, it can be defeated. But if it meets head on what's going on, it conquers. It knows where to go. And it doesn't seek out to conquer, it stands its ground. That's what I mean by that. So with this one you have communication. This person is going to have this whether or not they want it. So they have a choice to make it as easy or difficult as they want. That's up to them. Okay. The number 4 of swords. What's interesting about this one, you have 3 swords in the open. You have one sword here, sort of like underneath, hidden. This card to me frequently represents initiation, the transition from one kind of awareness to another kind of awareness. Whether it's initiation into a secret society or initiation of becoming from boy to man or whatever. It's a change and increase and a what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know.
Where awareness comes together and starts to make sense.
Understand?
It's like you begin to gather information here and there. It's like studying to become a
The
mechanic.
clarity.
That's one example. It's like studying computers or auto mechanics. Let's say you study about this about the car and then this about the car and you're learning this all the different things. And one day, it just all makes sense. You know, when this happens, this connects to that and that connects to that. This is that transition into that state. Okay? And in Buddha term, that is there's a specific term for that. Which we'll cover a different time. Okay. This is the one and only deck. Oh, excuse me, one and only card, which is the 12 of the major arcana. The Hangman. The only card in the deck that looks like it's upside down. It is not. He appears to be kind of tied to a tree branch, but you don't know how secure that tie is. Maybe he could undo his arms and reach up, untie it, climb on down and walk on. Notice he has a halo. Perhaps it's a resting place. Perhaps it's a moment to just reflect on just what's right here, right now, and then move on. It's a transition card. It's a temporary state. Now remember, this is one way of looking at it. Not by any means, it is the only way to look at it. If you see something different, if you see this and another card and they say something entirely different and it makes sense, go with it. It's not about what I'm saying, this is what it must mean. It's about tuning into your awareness. That's what it's about.
Now we're going to let you all learn something about how you use the tarot and how flexible it is. I want everybody here to think of a question, some question you have. Any question about anything, okay? You all got a question? Would you please cut the deck? Any place, just one cut. Do you want me to take this one or this one? This is the card that has your answer. Take the card, tell me your answer. Just look at it for a second and tell me your answer. Okay? What's your answer?
I have no idea.
Well, notice what you notice, pass it on.
Okay.
Answer?
I didn't really know the question.
What?
I'm still trying to get the question.
Okay, well, you did. I asked if everybody had their question.
I'm thinking I've got the answer for it, though, even though I don't have
All
the
right, what's your
question.
answer? Don't the question, just the answer.
I think it's going to be the way I thought.
Okay.
I want to have everyone look at it first.
All right, everybody look at it, then we'll get yours. Okay, just look at it for a second and pass it on.
I don't get the great big white hand. That's the first thing I saw.
You don't get what?
It's the first thing I saw was the hand. That's what I kept saying.
Just look at it for a second, get your answer, pass it on. If you didn't get his answer right away, just notice what you notice, and we will come back to it. What was the hand doing?
I just noticed it was the pale. It was the white of it that I noticed more than the hand. So I don't know what that is.
What does paleness mean to you?
Illness, usually. It had nothing to do with my question, though.
Huh?
It didn't have anything to do with my question.
It does. You just have to find out how it connects. You noticed a hand. A hand all by itself can give somebody a hand. It could be applause. It can be a helping hand. What kind of hand?
I just noticed the pale.
But the first thing you said wasn't pale. The first thing you said was hand.
Yeah, it was the it was a white hand.
Okay, what did you see?
What's your answer? Did you get an answer?
Did you get an
I was
answer?
trying to kind of figure it out.
What?
I was trying to kind of figure it out. I got an answer, but it doesn't really relate.
What?
It doesn't relate.
What was your answer? Even if it doesn't relate. What answer?
It's like kind of like a reward, kind of a thumbs up kind of thing. Kind of holding something.
Which is, all right, is there something you're contemplating doing?
No. I said if someone's going to pan out, like, you know, how it was going to turn out. And it's kind of like, it's kind of like.
You asked how it was going to turn out?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then it told you it'll turn out well.
Yes.
That's an answer.
What was your answer?
Well, I had two questions, and I was contemplating which one. And immediately I got the answer to one of my questions.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I got like a rising above, like an ascending type. Like
Can you speak up?
like with the
You
with
got-
that holding the wand up,
Right.
Like it kind of symbolized like ascending.
Mhm.
And this was an answer to that question.
Mm-hmm.
And did you get an answer for the second question?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Son?
From prior knowledge, I interpreted it as the aces are always very positive. For me, since the aces from the beginning is number one, I interpreted it as all I need to do is just get started.
Okay.
Okay.
Mine was just stay close to home, and like because home is nurturing.
Okay.
That's a good place for you to be, not right next to home, but close
Right.
enough to where you can get there if you want
Okay.
to.
I saw the hands up, and as I was handing it off, I saw a shape in the background that made me think of home.
Does that have an answer to your question?
It's sort of related to it, yes.
Does it make sense of... The thing we want you to understand, you didn't get the same meanings and the same thoughts. And I don't know about her, because I'll have to find out what's going on with her. I mean, is it a question you can ask?
I was just asking a very direct question if we were going to have a boy or a girl.
Oh,
And I saw the pale hand. I didn't get that. I didn't understand what that had to do with anything. With my
well,
question.
actually, probably the only answer you got was yes.
But I'm still trying to think of the question.
You're still thinking of
Then
the
Can't
yes.
think of
question.
anything.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, that goes back to Candy Dallas for me.
Yes. I mean, it was that kind of... You got to watch questions sometimes, but
Random?
it's like, I'll give you this, but I haven't told you what it is yet.
Yes. Could be more specific.
Fine.
Did you have a question?
Basically, yes.
You're-
Growing, it's going to do it, yes.
Okay. What we want you to understand is
Yeah.
no
Well,
car...
we have one more.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I just saw the new home in the background, so that was kind of the answer.
Okay. The whole point is, usually you can get any kind of answer out of any one card. No card is limited in what it can tell you. We've given you some of the history of the cards. We haven't given you meanings you have to use, but we want you to understand you can use them in a positive way. And that's probably the most important thing to do with the tarot or with any other reading, is to use it in a positive way. If you happen to have a card over here. But she's talking about the dowsing class. You'll learn in dowsing. Never ask a question that isn't specific, because you get answers that aren't. In other words, is it going to rain tomorrow? The answer is always yes, because someplace it's going to rain. But there's one other thing before you go on break that I wanted to share with you, because when you come back from break, I won't be talking at you, you'll be reading cards. And you can come down here and get a deck to use. But we like to do this. It is the only deck, actually, the only deck that we do read the book. If you have a deck and you have a book, you cannot use it. You're not allowed to use it in this class because that's just somebody else's philosophy, religion, something like that. What we want you to do is learn to use the tools to turn into yourself. But this happens to be the one tool in which we read the book. And it's one that we all love. Because no matter what's going on, You ask a question, and this book just gives the best darn answers. If you don't even know what question to ask, you use the book, and you get very, very good answers. So I'm going to cut the cards for the class. And I'm going to look it up in the book. And this book is full of spiritual teachings. Fascinatingly enough, the card is death, that which never dies. And this is the part we really like about it. Came from a Zen teacher, which is why we like it. Bring your attention to looking inside yourself to that which never, this is for the whole class, for each of you individually, to that which never dies. You are now ready to let go of what has died or gone. Forget about trying to bring it back, and don't take it personally that it is gone. Buddha's miracles are totally different from those of Jesus. A woman goes to Buddha. Her child is dead, and she's crying and weeping. And she's a widow, and she will never have another child, and the only child is dead. And that was all her love and all her attention. But what did the Buddha do? The Buddha smiled and said to her, you go into the town and just find a few mustard seeds from a house where nobody has ever died. And the woman rushed into the town, and she went to each house, and wherever she went, they said, we can give you as many mustard seeds as you want, but the condition will not be fulfilled, because so many people have died in our house. Again and again it happened. But she hoped, maybe, who knows, there may be some house somewhere that has not known death. And she went around the whole day. By evening, a great understanding had dawned on her. Death is a part of life. It happens. It's not something personal. It's not a personal calamity that has happened to me. With that understanding, she went to the Buddha, and he asked her the mustard seeds, and she smiled, and she fell at his feet, and she said, initiate me. I would like to know that which never dies. I don't ask for my child back, because even if he is given to me, he will die again. Teach me something so that I can know inside myself that which never dies. Okay? So I hope that has meaning for all of you. I think it is again focusing on what's inside yourself. And the whole focus of all our classes is that. These classes are about helping you get in touch with your own inner awareness. For your own life, for whatever you do. Okay? Now then, would you please, let me see this. Well, there are 8 of you. So I want each of you to get a partner that you don't know. Okay? For instance, why don't you work with him? And you work with him? You work with him, and you work with her. Will that do? Okay. If you want to come, you go have a break. We will give you a lot of papers, several, that give you different layouts you can use once you learn to use the cards without the layouts, okay? Some of the layouts you've seen before, a couple of them are probably good. All right.
And no books.
So you get whatever the fire dragon we had. That was because of Leo's. You understand?
Oh, that's right.
In other words, we were having a backyard barbecue for Leo's, for 3 of them, because they all had birthdays close. And Michael had found a 35 millimeter camera at a garage sale. He was looking to see if he could want to buy it. And they told him, go ahead and use it. So he was taking pictures of the barbecue. And one picture took itself, and we didn't even know it until the films were developed. And when those films were developed, there was this incredible fire-breathing dragon, which you've seen. Haven't you? I've got it on the wall.
Yeah, I remember.
And that was purely, it took itself. We didn't know a thing about it. We didn't see it until it was printed. I mean, we'll bring one to class and you can all see.
I need to get that thing scanned.
You need to what?
We need to get that picture scanned into the computer and get. We need to find
Yeah, you can scan that one in and you can give us some big
The
ones.
print will do fine.
I've got the
Nice
negative.
to find that, huh?
I've got the negative.
Oh, you got the
I think we didn't even put on a coffee cup that's so great.
That'd be an interesting one because I wouldn't want to.
And it's the only thing in the picture. It's black with this fire, and it's this head of this dragon breathing fire. And there's no mistaking what it is.
Anyway, what you do with
Comes to
the
reading different.
cards?
Now, oh yes. Go
You
ahead.
want to,
Everybody,
someone decide who's going to read first.
Are you ready?
One you're going to read, the other one's going to be read, please.
Put out a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 13 cards for this purpose.
For the class.
Because the class is only so long, okay? You read the other person, then they will read you. Okay?
The person you're reading for shuffles the deck.
And the person doing the reading chooses the deck that will be used. Okay?
And when you lay the cards down, lay them out so that the reader is right side up to the reader.
And then just go to it. And if you have a question, hold your hand up and somebody will come over.
What did you say about 3 to 13 cards? Only use 3?
For this class, you can put out a maximum of 13 cards, a minimum of 3. You can put them out in any configuration you want. You can put them out in a circle, a pyramid, 2 lines, 3 lines, we don't care. And when you start reading, start with either the first card that you laid out or the card that sort of stands out and wants you to start with it. And then read cards as they are next to each other. If you come to a card you absolutely cannot get anything from, you may take 2 more cards off the top of the deck, up to 2 more. Put it with it to see if that helps you understand that card. Okay? Those are the basic rules.
So we need to have a question again, right?
No, you don't need a question with the tarot cards.
Okay, good.
With playing cards, you need a question. With tarot cards, you don't. Not that you always actually. Because this is simply. This was very important. Before you do the reading, take one moment to say to your unconscious, let this help. Or be helpful to the person I'm reading. Always.